and then with the whole track. Hey, my name's Thomas. I write music under the name Dokkodo Sounds. Thanks so much to Will for having me on the channel. Been a big fan of his since he began the channel, actually, and now I'm lucky enough to call him my friend as well. So I'm going to be breaking down a few things from my new EP called No Feeling Is Final, out on Dirt Records. So yeah, hope you enjoy it and find it useful. Thanks.
Bud, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. I've had Between Us and Haze on repeat in anticipation for your release tomorrow. What are some of your favorite parts of this EP, and do you have any tools or tricks in your bag in which you've utilized on this production?
Yeah, so this is the first track from the EP called Between Us, and I think it's probably the one that I'm most proud of. Texture, I think, is something that's really important to me, and the actual idea for this track started with this like piano texture here. Which was actually a sample from a pack that I made for shout out to Sound Ghost. It's called Lo-Fi Expanses. If you want to grab that pack on Sound Ghost, little cheeky shout out there. But you can see I've got these atmospheres here, and that's just taken from that there. I've just popped it into a different key. But I make quite a lot of sample packs, and I really love that because it gives you a kind of a sonic palette of all of your own sounds that you can use, and you're not relying on other people's sounds. I just really love the process of sound design. A common theme for the EP is I wanted to take acoustic instrumentation and try and manipulate it in exciting electronic ways. Very inspired by kind of Bon Iver's loosely double-track guitar on his first record with the Wolves, and also kind of Police's vocals as well. Love her use of kind of really loosely double-track vocals. So I had this very simple kind of chord progression with the guitar. So that kind of formed the main basis of the track. But I wanted to add, like I said, an interesting electronic element in there as well. So I recorded myself just noodling around on the guitar, literally to no tempo, just to kind of get some nice licks, I guess. Kind of just loosely noodling around. And the idea was to then take that, pop it into Ableton's Simpler, and using the slice mode, I then found the little phrases that I liked and created this long kind of block of those phrases that allowed me to then trigger them off in an exciting way. So using an arpeggiator, I just allowed that to trigger off randomly all the notes or the phrases that I'd found. So that kind of sounds pretty wild by itself. But if you record the MIDI underneath using a blank MIDI channel and then turn off the arpeggiator, it gives you the pattern, which you can then start to refine a little bit. You can see I've automated the rate there to get kind of move between kind of dotted rhythms and triplets and things like that. And that gives you a more defined kind of part that you can then repeat. But when you combine it with the guitar layer, it just becomes this kind of really interesting texture. And then with the whole track, just becomes this really nice texture. And then another common thing in terms of kind of an instrument that I use a lot within my productions is the Soft Tubes modular emulation of the Rings Mutable Instruments module. It's a really, really lovely kind of physical modeling synth, I guess. And it creates these luscious plucked sounds, kind of metallic or wooden sounds. A lot of people mistake it for like a koto in my music, but it's actually this kind of synth, and it has this really lovely kind of plucked texture to it. just trying to like layer up the textures really with the track.
That is lovely. Thank you so much. And you've got a bit of an ear for textures, or at least I and other fans of your music think you use such wonderful textures in your music. Is there any particular textures or sounds, ear candy, that you've gone for in your latest work?
So in terms of how I might then create texture, you can see in this pack I've got a list of kind of atmospheres and textures, and that's something that I feel like I kind of gravitate towards. A lot of the time it revolves around taking a relatively dry sound like this, for instance, if I was going to turn this into like a textural thing, and then just having fun with processing, you know. You can see I've got this kind of creative favorites here in Ableton. Portal is an amazing plugin. So a lot of times I'll kind of stick that on and say, cool, let's like just put it on 100% wet. Yeah, that's quite nice. You can see I've got a few favorites. And then I might kind of, again, put on maybe something like Crystallizer. The Soundtoy stuff's great. You know, I could probably pitch this up. And there you've got quite a nice texture. Maybe you could clean it up with a bit of EQ. Take out some of that gunk. You can often get quite muddy when you're starting to kind of wash things out. But that's how I might kind of go about creating a kind of a texture and manipulating acoustic instruments within my tracks. Yeah, so to kind of carry on talking about texture a little bit, this is a track called Erase Me from the EP. And texture, I think it's quite interesting with the vocals. So one that I do love kind of using vocal chops within my tracks, and the track kind of started out with this little vocal chop. Again, just taking it from Splice. Unfortunately, I can't sound design good vocals. So this was kind of a little loop that I've kind of chopped up. So I really love that, but I wanted to create a bit of a pad out of that vocal. So you can do kind of things like looping it and kind of creating an instrument out of it, but I just really wanted to create a textural ambient layer to the vocal. And a great tool for that is something called the Spectral Drone Maker, which is by like Michael Norris. Just type in Michael Norris into Google. It's got this load of great experimental plugins, but this Spectral Drone Maker is a kind of a staple of mine. I use it to create all of the drones, you know, loads of this stuff. It's all just this special drone maker thing. Mallet drone. And it's super easy to use as well. I'm not going to go into it, but generally I set the scale to octaves, whack those octaves up to 10. I want kind of a thick stack of sound here. And the FFT size, without going too much into it because I'm not 100% sure of it myself, I think it's something to do with the grain size and how it stretches out the audio, but don't quote me on that. But you essentially let the plugin play out. So it takes a little bit of time to generate it because it does it in real time. But if I just hit play now, and you get this drone start to come in. And it's just such a lovely sound. So what I usually do is freeze that and flatten it. So you've got this ambient kind of washout of this vocal drone, and then you've got this super dry upfront vocal here, which creates this kind of contrast between the two materials. Yeah, I love that kind of contrast of the super washed out texture and then that dry vocal up there as well. A few other textural things. I really love taking, again, kind of a wash of sound idea. So maybe something like this kind of, or let's say it's first one. And then loading that into a sampler. You can see here, I've got a drone, and shout out to Peter Bark. He did this amazing tape reels pack. His stuff, Peter Bark's stuff, is absolutely amazing, and it's so cool to just chop that up. You know, I love this kind of idea of chopping up a wall of sound, very, very inspired by kind of Gold Panda, that kind of thing. That forms the harmonic for the track. Also forgot to mention, shout out to my friend Mountain Range. He showed me the arpeggiator guitar trick. Forgot to mention that. So that kind of the textural side of things there. And I guess finally as well, I do love Taiko's music. So I always try and create kind of Taiko inspired synths. And that's just a really simple patch. It's a sine wave with a tiny bit of FM applied to it. And then I'm just really kind of compressing it and distorting it with some of the Sound Toy stuff, even really driving the Echo Boy. And you can kind of really hear that kind of distortion within the sound. I love how it kind of gets squashed together a little bit. You know, I'm absolutely slamming it. But that's because I really want to over-compress it. I want to over-compress the sound and kind of emulate that lovely Taiko distortion texture.
Let me interrupt my friend real quick, because summer's on its way, and best believe the two of us have so much music on the way and scheduled for you guys. I find one of the easiest ways to do that is with DistroKid, and that will go out to over 150 stores. And if you work as hard as Dokkodo Sounds does with his releases, it's such a welcome break to not have to stress about your music release. If you're considering releasing your music, then do so with DistroKid and use that link in the description below, because you'll get 7% off your first year. For now, guys, let's get back to the video. When you play a little bit of guitar, I know you play a few instruments. Do you try and put those real world instruments into your electronic production? How do you tiptoe the balance between mixing the real with the electronic? Is it even a conscious choice?
Yeah, adding a real instrumentation was definitely a conscious decision. I think it's just something I'm trying to explore more within my music now. I kind of started out with playing folk music, moved into electronic music, and now I'm just trying to kind of combine the two, just purely for my own enjoyment, really. So this track, Hey, is very similar to Between Us in the sense that it has this kind of double-tracked guitar idea. But with the first example, I'd already had the track and I layered in the guitar part. But with this, the guitar part started the main basis for the track. So I've got this really simple chord progression that just moves throughout the entire track. So again, that loose double-tracked idea, I actually recorded all the guitar parts 4 semitones higher and then pitched them down to the key that I wanted to give it that kind of weird, slightly not natural sound, I guess, to it. And I thought that worked really nicely. And again, similar idea of then manipulating that. We've got this middle guitar part which just sits in the middle, got the left and the right here. If I just unfreeze that, and we can see I've really tried to isolate some of the sound, and I'm playing again just a variation of that guitar riff. But I've really reverbed it out. I've really just isolated kind of a certain set of frequencies, but then I've popped Portal on it, so that really transforms it into this kind of textural layer. And again, combine that with the main guitar. And you just get this really nice blend of acoustic instrumentation with that same acoustic instrumentation that's been altered slightly. And I think when you take an acoustic sound, or any sound really, and then kind of make material out of that sound or loop, I think it can kind of create a consistency across the track. Most of this track is coming from the guitars, and then I've got this really simple piano melody which is just filling out the space. And then it's just the drums and bass. And even those are really simple. Just got kick snare, hat, and this little Foley percussive layer on top of that. With some effects as well. Got my old friend cymatics going on. And then I've got some risers that, again, I think were made out of kind of rain sounds that I did for Novation. Which create these, again, kind of textual transition effects. Instead of using, cymbal risers or kind of massive white noise risers for this music, maybe that stuff isn't appropriate. So I'm kind of trying to create transitions out of Foley and things like that. I hope you have enjoyed that. Thanks.
Dude, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. It's been super insightful for me, and I just hope the community enjoys and appreciates that time as much as I have. And on that note, what did you guys think of this episode? Should I invite more artists on the show? Maybe it could be a once a month or a bi-monthly thing. And what sounds do you want to hear in future episodes? Either way, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button. And for now, guys, I thank you. And I'll see you next time.